welcome to Desert Wanderers, produced by Salt and Light Radio. If you're new here, we bridge the gap between you and the person in the pew next to you. I will be interviewing priests, religious, and laity in our local Boise diocese, asking questions that'll help you navigate your vocation and help build community wherever you are with whatever resources you may have. Let's build the city of God together. Awesome. Well, Taryn, I'm so excited to have you on the show today. With that being said, I would love to just hear about your faith, where you're at and your vocation, and kind of go from there.
All right. Well, thanks, Natalie, for having me on. I think I'm in the same boat as you because Salt and Light is very new to me. And, where I grew up, there wasn't really Catholic radio, or at least not that I'm aware of. So kind of getting immersed in this in the last, few months, I've been doing my Blessed and Beautiful segment. It's like, oh, there's this person doing this thing and that person doing this thing. And it is very much like meeting people for the first time. And I really enjoy it though. It's a whole new world out here in the Catholic radio. So I've been a, cradle Catholic and born and raised and baptized. My parents were Catholic. My grandparents were Catholic. I went to private school, in a really small town with not a lot of access to like Christian resources, but we made do. And I've always felt great comfort in my Catholic faith. When life gets really hard or, something unexpected happens, I find that like I'm always relying on my faith more than anything because I know that God has given me all of the blessings and he's there through all of the turmoil. So daily mass has, been such a blessing for me. I absolutely love it. That's just been consistent throughout my life. I am married and my husband was a non-practicing Catholic when I met him. And I've discussed this on my Blessed and Beautiful channel or segment that, I told him, hey, it's okay if you don't want to come back to the faith, but it's really important that I have Catholic kids because I want to share something very, very close to me. And he hesitated and thought, ooh, I don't know if I want to get into this. And then he ended up coming around and saying, okay, if we have kids together, let's raise them Catholic. And then, of course, he came along, shortly after. My husband, we met when I was 19, and he decided while we were dating that he wanted to join the Navy, and I agreed. And then we got married, did the whole boot camp, travel across the country sort of thing. And it was really challenging. But the whole while, one of the first things I would do when we would move to a new base is find the Catholic place, find a small community for me to be a part of. And that helped my sanity. And yeah, Catholicism has been a steady presence in my life. And the fun part is I've gotten to watch various people throughout my life also get to come to God. And it's really exciting. My sister-in-law, she was not Catholic when she met my brother, then she converted. And it's like, I don't know, you get the warm and fuzzies, when you see people join the faith. And so, yeah, it's been a presence in my life and it is a great joy to watch other people come to faith too. So there's my monologue.
And then how many kids do you guys have now?
So I have 2 children. I have a son who's 9 and a daughter who just turned 7. And my son will be turning 10 here in a matter of 2 weeks.
Oh my goodness. Are you excited for First Communion this year?
So actually my daughter is in 1st grade and she will be doing it next year. And I am so excited because when I saw my son do First Communion, like I remember my first communion, and actually my husband remembers his first communion, which his story is really cute. And I'll probably explain it to you later at some point, but we all have a special memory from First Communion. And so watching my son go through that, it was like, oh my gosh, he's going to remember this day. He is going to remember this day. And there is something so special about walking up with your child to receive, the body of Christ. And it was a very, like, I was so proud of my son, and I'm proud of my husband for, being okay with this happening. And, it's the stuff of dreams for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And so then go ahead and go into your segment on Salt and Light right now. So when does it typically air? And then tell us a little bit more about what you guys, your topics you focus on.
So, if anyone had ever told me, even a year ago, that I was going to be doing a live radio segment broadcast to the whole of Idaho, I would have said, "You're kind of nuts. There's no way." But I had a woman who works at the parish office refer me to Carol, and Carol got a hold of me and said, "Do you want to do this segment? It's basically just going to be a wide swath of women, Catholic women, discussing, Catholic topics. And, from marriage, which was this last one, to, gosh, I mean, we cover a whole bunch. I even have to think about it, but just like go how to navigate tough times. And, just for me, I try to look at it as the reality of my faith, not it all glitzed up and glammed up, but it's on Fridays from about 7:40-ish to about 8. And just a 20-minute segment. And there's 5 women total. And we kind of just rotate, through the weeks. Sometimes, there was a month or two ago, I didn't do a segment because there's 5 women. And then, the last couple of months I was back to back. So, it's really fun, and it keeps me on my toes. I'll tell you that, because I really have to think about what I want to say. You can't just go on a long rant when you have 20 minutes to answer a few questions.
And today is the day for the long rant. So
yeah,
totally opposite.
So, yeah. And I really do. I think it's a lot of fun because the women are kind of everywhere. There's one in Pocatello, there's some in the Boise area. And we're all at different stages of our lives. Some of them have adult children, some have, children my age, some don't have children. And I actually really like that. Rather than just listening from one Catholic perspective, you're getting such a wide variety. And I feel like you're going to be able to capture a larger audience doing that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so one of the reasons that I reached out to you is Carol actually connected us. And I think the more people listen to this podcast, they'll realize that Carol's the real brains behind the operation here at Salt
I figured that out really fast.
Yeah. So, but anyway, she connected us because I have been really wanting to talk to someone about digital detoxing and social media. I guess the first question to get this started would just be, how has your journey been with technology? And how has that affected you? And then have you ever had a point where you decided that, what, I really actually need to take a step back? And what was that point?
I think the funny thing is I am considered a millennial, and everyone assumes that we're very tech oriented and always glued to our phones. And I think we are, but technology actually doesn't come naturally to me at all. Even being able to navigate the updates on my computer, it's like, okay, I hope I don't break it, or, because I'm always, it does not, it is for people who are smarter than me. And, my husband, on the other hand, is incredible. Like, he picks up a device and immediately knows how to use it. He is just amazing. And I think we balance each other out in that way, where sometimes I actually do need to have technology. Case in point, our conversation right now. I think technology is wonderful in that way. It connects us. I mean, the fact that you and we don't live close to each other, we're able to have this conversation and connect and then put it out to the larger community. That's the blessing of technology. And when I can't navigate that, or I struggle, I have my husband come in and help me. And he balances that out, and he goes, okay, Taryn, don't hit that button. You're going to erase something. This is what you do. But he, on the other hand, it constantly wants to get the latest and the greatest. And I don't have the desire to do that. So sometimes when he's spinning his wheels, I'm like, I need something high tech. I need to be, on top of it. I tell him, why? We have two little kids. He has a full-time job. There's no need for you to be the latest and greatest. We're not living in Silicon Valley. You're not doing coding, like it's okay to let go of needing the latest and greatest. And I think very much like my relationship with my husband, I think that's how we have to have where we balance each other out. I think that like as a broader sense, we need to do that. Technology is wonderful. I mean, how exciting that I get to meet you and do this, this podcast. And yet I don't think I need the latest and greatest to do that,
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely know for myself that when I was in high school and even in college, I really did want like the nice phone with all the it was always the updated camera. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Wanted the updated
Because you want
camera.
to, you want to look really good until they get to the really detailed ones and you're like, oh no.
Wait, I don't want you to see those pores, okay?
Exactly.
So, yeah, so like I think for me, the one thing that's interesting is I did have like a sizable chunk of my childhood where there weren't like cell phones, like
Yeah.
at all. You know what I mean? Like not really. I'm trying to think if my parents had cell phones at that point. I think they may have. I don't remember. Like it was definitely not common.
Yes.
And it was like you had the multiple phones in your house, right? The ones that were like not connected to the to the wall. And
Yeah.
then you had like we had the one family phone that was connected. It had like a cord and was connected, but then we had the other ones. So like when I think about it, I think most of the time we just use those. And then I knew my like dad's work numbers and stuff. But it's very interesting because I grew up and then immediately like when I'm in the like time of like maybe middle school, right? That's when everyone started getting their, well, just before like fourth, fifth grade, everyone started getting cell phones and they were like flip phones, right? Obviously. And then you
Right.
always
Yeah.
wanted the new, so that's the weird thing is like, I kind of grew up in this like generation where all this technology was growing so much that of course you wanted the newest
Yeah.
technology. And through all of this, you're getting all the different apps start coming out. So, right. So we have like, I remember my exchange student at the time, she's like, "Oh, Snapchat is not going to be cool in
Oh
like
no.
4 years."
She's probably like me. We're just like missed the tech train.
Yeah, so she was like, "Oh, it's not going to be like a big thing. It's like going to crash and burn." Sure enough, here we are, and Snapchat is still very popular.
Yeah.
But then it like also influenced like dating, and it seems that honestly, it feels like a lot of the times we can't do normal tasks
Mhm.
without the technology that we have, right? Like so I think one of the things I want to kind of move into, and at least in this podcast, is like the idea of getting rid of technology for good. It seems like people can go through a cycle, or I'll talk for myself, where I'm like, okay, technology, like I'd rather just get rid of it and go back to a smartphone. But then I'm like, well, I really like my Google Maps. And like,
Yes.
how am I going to take pictures of my kids?
Mhm.
And, like, oh, well, it is nice to connect on social media every once in a while. Or I have a job where I need to be posting on these different platforms, right?
Right.
And so other people might have like career things that encourage them to have smartphones, and it's recommended, and that doesn't even include like tablets or other devices that people might need for their work. So I guess when we're going into this digital like overload, what do you see as like the main contributors to people becoming overwhelmed, anxious, or even like addicted to social media, or not social media? You can hear my answer, social media, to technology.
Hmm.
And um, what do you think in your perspective, kind of looking from like a little bit, more separated from that, or like seeing younger people, like what have you noticed, as like the root problems maybe, and what are your I guess, what are your thoughts on those?
So, it's interesting because being an older millennial, I remember those Big Macs that were like colorful?
Yeah.
They're like yellow and red. And I remember using those in school and being like, oh, I am like, I am a genius. I am so fancy. These are like amazing, and now looking back, it's like I'm on the laptop that is, half an inch thick. And
Yeah.
it can do way more than that big, big, colorful computer could do. And I remember when Google first came out, and I remember having a flip phone and I had a cell phone charm because there was a spot to put the cell phone charms. And I remember texting on the little flip phone and, you hit the button a
Button
few
three
times.
times. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember my mom getting really angry at me because we didn't have text coverage. Things have changed so much. They've changed so much. I remember when texting was unusual and
Yeah.
phone calls were the thing, and now it's reversed. And I sometimes think, even when it comes to that, I think it's good. It's people don't want to answer their phone anymore. They'd rather text,
Yeah.
but I, I think it is good to call people, especially like, when you want to explain something in detail or you want to express emotion. You can't necessarily get that through texting all the time. I mean, you can do emojis, but, I feel like, yeah, texting is convenient, but sometimes a phone call, it's like getting a handwritten letter. It's a good thing for society to continue to reach out to each other in a very human way and be able to hear the human voice and, um, you know, getting out. And nowadays people have to get out of their comfort zone to make a doctor's appointment, and it's like, yeah, it's not fun doing the adulting, but like, this is good for you to do. This is good for you to call someone and reach out to them rather than just sending a text of like, hey, um, I also think that, as technology gets better, the quality of life can definitely go up. I mean, I have seen, look at what, technology can do in the healthcare industry. There's so many medical breakthroughs that because of technology, we can make people live longer and we can give them a better quality of life. A good example is my husband's retina detached this last year. And he went in for a regular doctor's appointment and they said, hey, do you want to get a picture of your eye? And my husband usually goes, no, I don't want a picture of my eye. Just look at it. But this time he said, sure, go ahead and take a picture. Well, that machine took a picture of his eye for $25, 25 bucks, and it saw his retina detaching. And the doctor, within 2 days, he was able to go in surgery and have his vision saved. And since then, even the surgeon constantly taking pictures of his eye, using that computer technology, using the immediate feedback that the healthcare, that technology can afford us. And I mean, I think my lucky stars that they were able to catch it and literally within just a short amount of time, they were able to completely save his eyesight and go to his other eye and, save and salvage that one because it was looking a little wonky too. I don't know what's up with my husband's eyes, but because of technology, because of even the hospital using a computer system, the wild thing is the surgeon said the hospital's going to call you later this day. And sure enough, within hours, the hospital called. Do you know why? Because there's constant communication. There's technology that we're using, and they already knew everything. They called my husband and they said, hey, this is surgery that you're having. And here's the area you're going to. They didn't have to run through a whole litany of, so tell me what's happening again, and I think there's a blessing in that. There's a blessing in even the things that you don't think about. We always think of social media, which is true. I think social media can be completely, you can get lost in it very, very easily. But then when you think about, people like my husband and I don't know, the bazillions of people out there nowadays that are being helped with technology in ways that we don't even think about. And, but then there's the downsides, of course. There's the downsides of technology. And that could very well mean, look at social media. I'm funny. In fact, the only thing I have is Facebook. I remember when MySpace was a thing.
Yeah.
I'm almost positive my really embarrassing my MySpace is like up there with like the music and the glittery background you can choose and the really embarrassing questionnaires you would put out, like people cared about how many tattoos you had or whatever. And Facebook's the only
I
thing I
totally had one of
have.
those too.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I just like I don't have the nerve to like look it up and see if it's still there because I'm like I'm sure it's embarrassing, but it's under my maiden name, so no one can find it. um, but I purposely only have Facebook for that reason of not wanting to go overboard or overindulge. And um, I think that people, when they're on social media, they put their best foot forward,
Mhm.
And I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Look, I dusted back here before the show. I moved my kids' stuff before the show. Like they had their schoolwork and everything back here. I dusted because you know what? I don't want everybody to see the dusty part of my life. I want them to see the nice part. And that's just a very small thing. But people go to extremes to be the best version of themselves on social media, whether it means um, going to extremes in how they look, and surgeries and modifications and, strenuously working out to the point of complete exhaustion, or it could be, showing wealth, that, oh, I
Yeah.
have the latest and greatest. I have the nice cars. And it's no big deal for me to have all of this stuff, or it could be the perfect relationship, look at my significant other. Aren't they wonderful? We're just perfect all the time. Or even the perfect children, here my kids come in here and I'm like, go away. I'm like, that's the reality. I'm trying to do a show, go. But, then there's social media where it's like, oh, come on in, kids. They never act up. They're just great. And I'm always a patient mom and I never tell them to go away. And, you know, sometimes that's like you can kind of get lost in feeling like, wait a minute, what's wrong with me? Why does my house have dust? Why am I driving a car that's got lots of miles on it and the check engine light is on and I'm kind of ignoring it because I don't want to see how much it costs to repair? Or, my spouse has an annoying cough and he's been bothering me all day. I mean, like, not speaking from experience at all, but we don't want to put that forward. And sometimes you think like, oh gosh, am I the only one that experiences these life frustrations? And the reality is no, you're not. Those people experience it too, but they're putting on a mask. And we have to remind ourselves that it's a mask, and they're putting their best foot forward like kind of anybody would, but they're also human, their
Yeah.
kids get into trouble, their spouse annoys them, they have financial frustration sometimes, like that is life, but we don't really see it on social media as much.
I think so I follow Dave Ramsey's like YouTube channel. And one of the things that he said about our generation is that it's basically like we it's the problem of keeping up with the Joneses. But the only difference is that we don't get to see all the other stuff. So he's like, when you were keeping up with the Joneses, you would be like looking at all their nice stuff, but you also saw their fights and how their children act and that their house was like a disaster sometimes. And
Mm-hmm.
you got to see all the messiness across the street as well. And he's like, when you're on social media, you don't get that. All you get is the perfect. And so you're like trying to keep up with someone else's life and yet you're not seeing all the messiness that is behind it. So yeah, so like totally understanding that like people put up like their best, their best self right on social media. But one of the things I want to go back to and like kind of talk to you about is like that time, that point of connection, right? Because there's in certain ways like technology has allowed us to connect in different ways, but they also have kind of pulled us away from a deeper connection. I guess another way to talk about it would be like when you've thought about technology and your children, what kind of things have you like seen in terms of this like connection piece? And I know that you and I probably had a similar experience. Like my parents hated that I had a cell phone because they were like, you're always on your cell phone, you're always texted, you're not like engaged with whatever the family's doing, that kind of stuff. So I guess like knowing that, what are you thinking about when it comes to like technology and your children? And then also like let's kind of dive into that connection piece.
Yeah. So, when it comes to my kids, I think the nice thing is because my husband and I balance each other out. So on a day like today, if I were not doing this podcast with you, I don't honestly, my kids are in my room right now and I have no idea what they're doing, but probably playing with a really, really bare bones tablet. I mean, this thing is old. It freezes. All it has is Netflix on it. They might be watching Alvin and the Chipmunks on, that's their favorite show right now. They might be watching that. So they do use technology. Granted, what they have is really, really old and dated and has just, it's so bare bones. Like it freezes half the time, which I kind of like because it teaches my kids that, they don't need the latest and greatest. Like Alvin and the Chipmunks is loading. It's just going to take a minute. But usually on a day like today, especially having my kids having the day off, we would go to mass. And if the opportunity allows, my son will altar serve. I feel like that's such a good way to get the day started. You don't need technology to do that. And I think sometimes starting your day off with like silence and prayer and reverence to God is, it just puts you right. Then usually if we're going to mass, we'll do like breakfast afterwards. And during breakfast, unless I get a text that's urgent for me to respond to, I put my phone down. I don't look at it. This morning we had to drop some skis off. So I said, kids, I'm going to just check the hour of the store. But otherwise, like we are engaged with each other. The only time usually when on a day like this that they get technology, and a lot of times I tell them, go outside. I'm bored, mom, go outside. I'm bored, mom, go outside. I'm bored, go downstairs, because our basement is children chaos. It's where their bedrooms are. It's where their toys are. There's nothing fancy down there. They can go and just destroy it. And they do. And so I tell them, go downstairs. I don't care if you're bored, that's your fault. It is not mine. You have access to have fun without me and without technology. And so I tell them, go play downstairs, go play outside. The only time they get technology is at the end of the day when they've proven that they can still have fun. They can enjoy the day as it comes. Usually that means like watching Netflix, like we have a TV that's connected to the computer. And so like they can pull up Netflix and usually, like I said, it's Alvin and the Chipmunks, or my son really likes Woody Woodpecker. That was a new discovery for him. And so they'll sit down and they'll have lunch or dinner and watch the show. That's their time where they get, 20 minutes, half an hour of just spacing out and watching a simple show. And that's the only amount of technology they really get with me because I'm not a tech person at all. And so I don't care if they're bored.
Yeah.
or they want to play with technology. I'm like, okay, well, that's too bad for you. My husband, on the other hand, he's different. If my husband were home and I was, say working at my kid's school as a substitute, he's more inclined to say yes to letting my kids have technology. My husband has this old Nintendo DS, like old, and he'll let my son play on it. Or he has like a little hunting game on his old phone. And my son will like to play on that. And I remind my husband before we go, or before I leave the house, hey, don't let them be on technology too much because they can definitely get wrapped up in that. And so can my husband, being that he really likes technology. However, when we're together, I feel like there's a pretty good balance. My husband will say, you know what, let him watch stuff in the morning while we make breakfast, or, our daughter read and practiced reading. I think she's allowed to watch her like puppy show on, the tablet. And so he balances me out in that way. And I think our kids are kind of watching that dynamic, or at least I hope they are. They don't know how to use a phone. They could dial 911 if they need to. But like the other day, I was doing a video call with my parents. And I'm like, hey, to my son, can you please hang up? And he had no clue how to do it. And part of me was kind of proud of that because he's
Yeah.
9 and he didn't know how to hang up. And I'm like, yes, he doesn't go on the phone often enough to know how to work it. And then part of me was like, ooh, but he should probably know in case like we need him to access, you know, to call somebody, you know. But it was kind of, it's sometimes nice watching my kids not know how technology works because everybody says, oh, kids know how everything works because they're on their devices all the time. And I'm like, well, we don't have the latest and greatest. I don't really care about technology. So my kids kind of don't know how to do stuff, and it's not their fault, it's more mine. But yeah, I try to do a balance because obviously, you know, they have Chromebooks at their school and they'll use it for, like, my son wrote a story and he typed it the whole time. And then the funny thing is he learned how to use dictation on it. And so there's a button you push and you talk and the computer types for you, which is wild. I did not know that was on a Chromebook. So I said, okay, well, you have to learn to type. So I turned it off. But yeah, I think kids, you know, we don't live near family. And so to kind of talk about making those human connections, we will do FaceTime, we will do, you know, Skype or something like that. And that's a way for my kids to see their relatives, to see their grandparents, to see, you know, my brother and his family. Technology brings us together because then my kids can visibly see them, like, oh, that's Uncle Brian, you know, or, oh, that's, you know, grandma, and that's Papa, and that's, you know, Gammy, and that's, you know, Papa John. And so like they can continually see the visual of my family members or my husband's family members in their mind. And so it's a balance. I definitely feel like it's good for your kids to know moderation, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and my husband and I think moderate each other, and I think it's good for my kids to see that. I mean, we're not perfect by any means, but I am proud of, like, my kids not knowing how to hang up on Zoom. I'm like, great, or whatever it was, FaceTime, I think it was. I was like, fantastic. But then then my son figured out dictation on the computer, so I was like, well, you know,
Here we are.
here we are.
So one of the other things I want to talk to you about is like, so you mentioned earlier about, you know, being really intentional about not being on your phone in front of your kids. So did you ever like have a time where you did struggle with like wanting to be on the phone or texting or on social media and like have to kind of limit that? Because I think oftentimes I go through ebbs and flows of that.
Oh
So like
yeah.
I'll be on the phone a ton and my kids will be going crazy and I'm like, oh, okay. Obviously like I'm spending too much time like talking to someone else than like actually connecting with my own children. And so I think from that, like what kind of boundaries have you put on yourself and like what kind of habits have you been trying to form and like what kind of advice might you be able to give when it comes to limiting time for your children, like, and limiting time in front of your children with technology? And again, I know that you said that you're not like wanting to be in the latest and greatest and whatnot, but those are still things that I think
Oh
are
yeah.
pretty universal to like whatever kind of technology you have. Like, 'cause my mom was, you know, always on the phone as well. So, you know, even though it was a house phone. So, yeah.
You know, it's kind of interesting. I'm of two minds with this. I think that how should I start? Which section should I start? Because I have opinions, but like they're kind of spread everywhere. One is when I'm on the phone for a decent amount of time in front of my kids, I usually tell them what I'm trying to do, because usually it's something like you know, something school related, and I'm wanting to respond to an email, or it could be something show related for that matter, you know, Blessed and Beautiful, or even the, you know, with you, the podcast. It could be something where I want to tackle it right now so I don't forget to respond, or, you know, it goes over my head and then shoot, I've missed a deadline on something. So I usually tell them, hey, I'm going to be on my phone for a little bit. This is what I'm doing. Or like if I, you know, am arranging altar serving with my son, because sometimes he'll do extra days, and I'll text, you know, either one of the priests, or I will text, you know, the guy who runs the altar serving. I'll be like, hey, you know, can my son fill in on this day? And I'll tell my son, hey, I'm working on something for you. So I usually try to let them know if I'm doing something on my phone that looks like I'm not paying attention to them. But the reality is I'm just trying to take care of something else. Also, being that I don't really have a lot of family here, or I don't have, I can't just call my mom and say, hey, can you watch the kids? I need moments where I not turn my brain off to the point where I don't know what my children are doing, but where I need to decompress.
Yeah.
I have been on for so long that it's time for me to tune out and read. I like to read advice articles. I don't, and the questions are always like, so I went to a party and my friend looked at me weird. Now I don't know how to handle it. It's just kind of, sometimes it's really silly questions, and I like those. You know why? Because they don't pertain to me. They're entertaining enough to listen, to read, but not dwell on. And so I'll tell my kids, hey, I'm going to read a dumb article just so I can decompress for 10 minutes, and they usually get it because they get that way too. They get overwhelmed. They need a time, some time to sit at the table and draw, or, they need a moment to be apart from each other. Go to your rooms and read because you're driving each other crazy. They understand that they need, the mind needs to calm down. And I usually like to tell my kids, like sometimes my son will be like, you're on your phone all the time. Well, he says that to be a little sassy because he's 9 and he's figuring out all the right ways to push mom's button. And I'll tell him, you want to know what I've done on my phone? I'll tell you what I've done on my phone. I've paid this bill. I've responded to this email. I set up your altar serving practice. I paid your Taekwondo bill, and then he's like, oh, the other thing that I have purposely done is I don't have Facebook on my phone. Mm-hmm. And like, I do not have it on my phone. The only way I access my Facebook is on our family computer, which is connected to the TV. That means that my kids can see it. So I don't go on Facebook when they're around because stuff pops up on Facebook, or my son's he is a very good reader and he can go up on one of those updates and go, ooh, look at all the bad words your friend said. And so I don't pull up Facebook because it's, it has adult content on there sometimes, words my son doesn't need to read, or, advertisements my daughter doesn't need to see. And so I'll go on Facebook at the end of the day after they've gone to bed. And I feel like that was, my husband sometimes says, just go ahead and put Facebook on your phone because everybody messages you on there. And I say, no, I don't want to, because I know if I put Facebook on my phone, I'm going to use it. And so it's a way of me self-regulating, that I'm only going to go on Facebook when my kids are in bed. Yes, I'm going to read the dumb advice articles, but those take me a few minutes and they're so much easier to let go of than some angry Facebook rant that your friend went on, and you want to get invested in. And so that's the way I self-regulate. My husband never uses Facebook. He has a Facebook account, but like he's not touched it in years. And he's not very social. He's introverted. So I think that's good for him. But yeah, I mean, I usually try to tell my kids when I'm on my phone why I'm on my phone. They know when I do my radio show, they can't burst into the room, or I mean, now because I'm on Zoom, they think it's exciting and they want to come and see like who are you talking to, but I think it's like learning how to set up boundaries for yourself. Like, being aware of your personality, being aware of your crutches, and kind of like, for me, I would love to be on Facebook more, but I don't have it on my phone, so I can't go on it. And I did that to myself. And perhaps it's learning those techniques where it's like, ooh, I really like TikTok. Maybe I shouldn't have it on my phone, or I don't know. Can you have TikTok on the computer? I'm not sure.
Yeah,
but
you can.
Okay, I figured as much. But or ooh, I like to go on Marketplace and buy a bunch of stuff, and that I don't need. And before I know it, I have too many knickknacks. Well, then don't have it on your phone, or don't have it in an area that's easy to access. Kind of just, setting up boundaries for yourself, and also making sure your spouse is on the same page and keeping you in check.
One of the things that I've done has been this program called App Block. So you set up times of the day where you can't be on certain apps
Oh.
on your cell phone. And so, because I think again, when it comes to it involving your job, if you have to do anything for social media, there are things you can't do on Instagram on the laptop that you can do. And I make, like, again, making excuses, right, for myself. But it's something that I do need to have on my cell phone. So what I have done is try to put an app block on. What I try to do is have it on anytime my kids are awake while they take their naps or their quiet time or whatever, and they're somewhere else and we're separated, then that's when I can do those things, right? And that's when I can get on those platforms and do the things that I need to do. So I feel like that's been really helpful. There's another one called the Minimalist Phone
Hmm.
app. I think it's called Minimalist. And it what it does is also really cool. So there's like cognitive sciences that have talked about the addiction of cell phones based off of like the colors and imaging. And so what they do is they turn your whole phone black and white and they don't have any app like symbols. It's only text. And
Oh, that's interesting. So
certain times.
it is like a self-control thing where, much like I don't have Facebook on my phone for a reason. Now, I don't have, a tech job like you do where you have to be on social media. I work as a substitute at, a tiny little Catholic school, and I don't go anywhere near their social media. So I don't necessarily need technology to do my job.
Mhm.
But I think that like if you're using it with a purpose, I don't think it's necessarily the same thing as like, oh, guys, I got to tell my Facebook followers like what I had for lunch and I need to get a bunch of hearts, or ooh, I got this new outfit and I need to post it immediately so I can have people tell me what they think. I think when you're doing a job with a purpose, especially, you're trying to reach a wider population, you're trying to connect with people. I think that's the plus of social media. I mean, there could be a Catholic who grew up in Idaho, but much like me, married somebody who went into the military and now they live far from family, but watching a podcast like yours makes them feel connected to home. So I don't think it's a bad thing to have, a tech job or be on social media. I think it perhaps maybe starts getting bad when you're looking for, validation, like, oh, that outfit is incredible, or oh, your lunch. Well, I actually do like it when people put food pictures on Facebook because it's kind of mundane and I love that. I'm like, that's great that you had like a BLT for lunch. Good for you. Like, of all the angering things that could go on social media, posting a picture of your sandwich is like, I don't know, it's like quirky and kind of, simple. And I like that. But, I don't think that it's bad necessarily to be someone who puts that outreach out there on social media, because like I said, there could be a woman, she's got, little toddlers and she is just fried because she's hung out with them all day. And then at the end of the day, she can sit down and watch your podcast and feel like, ah, she's from where I grew up. That makes me feel really nice. And like I'm closer to Idaho. And that's a blessing. And you putting yourself out there for people to find is also a good thing, you know? And
Yeah, I agree with you, but I want to actually head back to something you said earlier about starting your day with like daily mass and
mhm.
silence. I think that's so important. And I think that the balance here is the spiritual life, because I think where I would push back on you being like I have a 3-year-old and a like year and a half, right? And sometimes when I'm feeling fried, what I do is spend hours scrolling through videos
Yeah.
on Instagram,
Mhm.
whereas I'm not connecting through scripture and I'm not
That's
connecting to
true.
Jesus. So there's like a spiritual
Yes.
aspect to it, I think that I would like kind of push back on
Yeah.
as well. So I guess in that point, like, But then that's the thing though, is like it can get so easy because you could be like, oh yeah, but I'm just going on to listen to this podcast, or I'm just going on to like listen to Father Mike Schmitz, or,
Mm,
or Bishop Barron or whoever, because there's lots of
right.
like even like Catholic women influencers who are talking about praying the rosary or talking about raising Catholic kids or all of these things. And so it's not necessarily bad, but is that really deepening our connection with Christ? And I think that that would be the part where it's like I can almost get stuck in the practical point of being
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, I'm learning information. I'm learning information um about our faith or about how like Catholic parents are doing this or that. And I can often like see myself neglecting like the actual
Yes.
connection with Christ. So I
Yes.
think like let's go ahead and talk about that a little bit. So let's talk about like fundamental steps we can take in terms of seeking like Christ out, and then how that connects with like our technology consumption.
I think that's actually a really good point that you brought up. And I guess I didn't really think about that. Um, I think that maybe there's that balance. Like there is something to be said for getting out of bed really early in the morning on a day off when it's cold outside and you don't, and I could sleep in. I could get on my phone right away, but there's something to be said for, you know what? I'm going to wake up. I'm going to, put my best face forward, and I'm going to wake up my kids and we're going to go to church. There is something to be said for those tangible things, those things that you have to go out and you have to do. I'm not just going to pull up a rosary on my phone and call it good, which that is also really good. My
Right.
husband, he rides a exercise bike that I got for free, and it is an absolute piece of garbage, but it still works. And he'll ride that little thing, and he listens to the rosary while he's pedaling that bike. So, but it's not. It late in the evening. There's no mass. He doesn't particularly like that exercise bike because it's janky. And who really wants to go pedal down in the equipment room? Nobody. But listening to the rosary, it helps him engage and want to go and do that, more so than if he didn't. So I feel like the rosary there, in that case, it kind of helps him because
Right.
he's
Right.
like, well, at least I get to listen to a rosary, and again, it makes me think. Um, Whereas, if I woke up in the morning and I'm like, I'm just going to put on a rosary and I'm not really going to listen to it, and I'll just count that as my faith for today, when I know that I could go to daily mass and, feel the serenity that is mass, because there's no cell phones at mass, there's no, for the most part, there's no phone calls at mass unless someone forgot to put their phone on silent. And, I think there is something to be said for that tangible thing, the kids and I, if they're not in school, on Thursday, I will go to adoration. I've said that many times during Blessed and Beautiful, but I absolutely love adoration. And if my kids are in school, I go by myself, and no phones in adoration, no technology. It's just us and our minds and our prayers and God and the people around us. And there is something very tangible about saying, well, do I really need to go to adoration today? It's not like, a requirement to be Catholic to go to adoration, but I never feel worse for going. And it's
Yeah.
something that I can tangibly be there. I have to go. And, meanwhile, my husband has a long drive to work every day, and he works out in the desert. And so his drive is like 40 minutes. He'll listen to a podcast, a Bible podcast, or he'll listen again, or, if he doesn't get to do the bike and listen to the rosary, he'll listen to the rosary then. Well, that's a good use of technology because he's
Yeah.
driving anyways,
Yeah.
so I think it is kind of like that balance of something tangible that you have to go out and do, and it's kind of an inconvenience, but a good one. And then also something that might just aid your day, like listening to a rosary while you're driving or exercising or something like that.
Yeah. So then let's go ahead and talk about like let's talk about college for a second. College age folks. I'm wondering. When we're taking these steps, what do you think is the number one thing that someone today could do? What is the one thing that they could do today to help them maybe even just analyze where they're at with technology and
Yeah.
realize, like, is this a problem? Is it not a problem? Like, what do you think that first step should be?
I think the first step should be, what is the technology doing to serve your emotional or spiritual or physical well-being?
Mm,
You know, if your phone is keeping you on the couch, then it's time to reassess your phone usage. If your phone is keeping you from going to, say, mass, or going to do like a small spiritual practice, it might be time to assess your use of the phone, or digital media. If your phone makes you feel worse when you put it down because you read articles that just anger you, then you have an issue. And so your phone is like anything. It's a tool. It's like cooking with butter, right? Butter makes things taste so much better. But if you use too much butter in your cooking, you're going to have diet problems, And so, but you don't want to not use it, because it is an aid. It can make things better. And so technology is the same way, like driving somewhere new, use your phone so you can learn how to get there. Or, if you're driving to work, listen to the rosary or a podcast. But if you are, and especially with college kids, because I feel like nowadays, I know so many people who work from home. I know so many people who do not have to leave their house to do their job, or they don't have to interact with people. I met my husband working at a movie theater, and he was the hardest working guy there. And I was like, wow, that is attractive. And I feel like we don't get to do that anymore. We're so busy emailing, we're so busy texting, we're so busy, I don't know. My brother's a software engineer. He's so busy writing code. It's like, that's a good thing. We all need that stuff. But if you're not getting out and meeting people, shaking hands, seeing smiles, hugging people, interacting with the public as a whole, I feel like that's not healthy. And sometimes you need that real tangible humanness, it could very well mean, just experiencing being human, as opposed to just on the digital side, because we're physical, and I think that's why I like going to mass. That's why I like going to adoration, because I get to see the human. I get to be a part of it. And, a rosary on the phone is wonderful, but it's not going to replace, like, tangibly holding the beads in mass and saying it,
yeah.
you know. And I think for college kids, assess whether the phone is making your physical life harder, or obstructing on that. Is it making your mental life harder? Are you angry after you put your phone down? And your spiritual life, is it adding to those, or is it taking away from those? And if it's adding, then you've got a good balance. But if it's starting to take away, then it's okay. Like, guess what? There's gonna be tomorrow, and you can do better, and you can do it in small steps. It's not brain surgery, and someone gives you the tools and they're like, all right, now, just fly by the seat of your pants. This is tangibly something that I think everybody can do. It's not impossible.
Yeah. Awesome. And then do you think there's any, like, have you had any books or podcasts or just resources anywhere that you felt really helped you balance those things? And not even necessarily specifically talking about technology, but just felt like you had an idea of, like, how to balance your life in a way to, like, bring peace into your home.
I think a lot of it is, like, in the morning when we drive to school. I listen to, there's like a local radio station, talk radio, and I love it because it's just based right here out of Idaho Falls. And they talk about all kinds of things. These are people of faith too. They're not my faith, but like they'll talk about God. And I love that. I love that, like, here locally, I can listen to two people talking about their spiritual path in life. And it's kind of nice because you're like listening to a conversation. And my kids will listen to it, and they're very tame in what they talk about, as far as like, they're aware little ears are in the back seat. And so I kind of like it because it makes me kind of wake up and go, what's going on in my community? And what are these people thinking? And I love that it's live, and I hear them laugh when they misspeak or make a mistake or they push the wrong button. And like, I love that sort of live on air, local simplicity to it. And other times I'll just stream music, but I find the joy in those things. I find the joy in connecting with people's thoughts, just listening to two people talk. I love working at my kids' school because it's an elementary school, and every kid there would much prefer to have face-to-face dialogue, physical activities than being on their computers. In fact, the first couple of weeks that I worked at the school, I was subbing in a grade, and we had to do standardized testing, and it was in second grade. And after like an hour of them doing these tests, they're all like this, just because they don't want to be sitting at the computer anymore. They're just itching to get out, and they're wandering out of their seat, and they're going, Mrs. K, when's this done? I just want to color. And I'm like, great. Do you know how nice that is to hear that kids are sick of being on the computer and all they want to do is color? I want to color.
Yeah.
I don't want you doing these tests. And like, that's such a reality check for me, and it's wholesome to see these children crave coloring, crave going outside. That's such a balance to being with adults, where they're like, did you read this really depressing news article? And I'm like, oh, no, I didn't, because I don't want to be depressed. But you go to school and some kid draws you a heart and gives you a hug. Like, there is no amount of being on the phone that's going to replace that, like, absolute love that you feel in your heart when that happens. And so I think between like listening to like my local radio, where I just hear two people having a discussion, and going to the school and seeing those kids, be a bit of a hot mess and all they want to do is color. And even just like in my kids' extracurriculars, going out and talking to parents rather than being on my phone. It's like, I'm going to sit down on this bench and I'm going to talk to this mom. And, I'm going to listen to this, kid who he's a sibling and he's not doing this activity, and he's going to talk to me about his shoes for 20 minutes. That's what I think I try to do, is I try to find those human connections, even if it's something mundane, like a kid talking about his shoes for 20 minutes. At least he's excited, and good. I'm glad he wants to talk to me. I think that's more entertaining than reading an article,
Yeah.
And so
I'm right there with you though. I think the thing we long for the most is, as human beings, is that human connection, and to be seen and to see others,
yeah,
you know? And I think that it can be a balance, and it's so rewarding, but it also takes the risk of like not being seen. Does that make sense? Like
yes.
sharing yourself with someone and not being seen or wanting to be seen. Like someone just being like, I have too much time. Like I don't want to like actually engage with you like that. So there is that risk, but it's so rewarding when we like do actually connect. And if you're the person like you are, like when you're talking about going to school, and you can give that attention to that child who might just need to talk about his shoes for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Then that's like this amazing point where you can just say like, was I present with them? Yeah. Like it is so rewarding for us, even though it is a risk, right?
Yes.
Even though that it is a risk
Yes.
to like try to make that connection. So I think that's a really good point to take away on that as well.
Well, and you're right when it comes to taking a risk. Like putting yourself out there is a total risk. And you don't want to be rejected, like you put yourself out there and people are like, oh, ugh, you're a little too weird for me. And it's like, oh no, I've been found out. But I think then you just kind of go, okay, well, I wasn't that person's cup of tea, and then you happen to find somebody that is, I think one of my favorite things is you just meet somebody and naturally the conversation just happens. And I mean,
Yeah.
it could be about anything. I remember having a conversation about traffic lights with somebody I just met. And I was talking, my dad used to work on traffic lights. And so I know a little bit about them. And so I was telling him about my traffic lights, like as if that's super interesting. And he was just like, oh, wow. Yeah. And he got really excited and he wanted to share his opinions. And I walked away going, I just had a conversation about traffic lights. It was like 20 minutes long, like the kid talking about their shoes. But this person actually was interested because he had his own thoughts too. And, I walked away feeling better. I was like, that person understood my weird.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
they were like, I see your weird and what is it? I equal it, I match it.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen that person since, but we just happened to get in that conversation. And sometimes when you have a random conversation like that and you have that human moment, that connection, it's like, okay, I might have been rejected a few times on trying to have a discussion, but that time somebody reached back and that was really, really fun. And that can happen with kids, that can happen with older people, that can happen with, I mean, it could happen with anyone. You just have one of those beautiful conversations. And yeah, I've definitely been rejected. There is no doubt. And, there are times where I start up a conversation and everybody just goes, I don't get it. We are moving on. And, you know, even once in a while, I will approach one of the priests and I'm like, hey, I have an idea. And they're like, oh, not right now. I'm in the middle of doing something. And they shuffle away. And I'm like, oh, I don't know how I feel about that. But the reality is they'll come back and let me, say something, but they know, oh, Taryn's approaching. She's going to take up a decent amount of my time because she likes to talk and she has ideas. But, a lot of times it's nothing personal. They're busy. They have something to do. They want to hear about my idea, but they're on their way to go listen to confession and they don't need to hear about my idea for the preschool, but it's a balance. And part of being human is, I think to a certain extent, social media or being on your phone or constantly having access to, the digital world, it numbs the pain of rejection,
Yeah.
until it doesn't. If
Yeah.
you're constantly out on social media and you're excited because people hearted your picture and they're saying, oh, you're so beautiful and look at you look amazing. And then you're like, wow, that I feel really good. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do it again. And then over time that stops. I feel like the
Yes.
rejection is even worse.
Yes,
And,
absolutely.
you know,
Absolutely. I
whereas
totally agree with that.
yeah, and I think that it's even more amplified on social media. In personal interactions, you get rejected, but you can understand there's more complicated. Like the priests kind of scuttling away from me. Well, it's because they're busy. And I understand that. Whereas I'm on social media, you don't quite understand that context,
Yeah,
that human context, if that makes any sense.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think this has been amazing. Is there any last words of encouragement or anything that's like kind of dwelling on your heart that you'd like to say in conclusion?
I think the biggest thing is don't forget about making human connections, and maybe you're more introverted like my husband, where he's like, I do not want to go to those big parties and talk with people, but okay, well, don't go to the big parties, but go do a small meetup somewhere else. Don't forget to make those human connections, and if you're extroverted like I am, don't forget it's okay to be, you're right, like rejected. Just be like, all right, well, this conversation didn't work out, but I might have a 20-minute traffic light conversation with a complete stranger and feel really good after that. And so don't forget there's a balance and don't let technology numb you. Don't let it rob you of your spiritual well-being or your physical or emotional well-being. Just let it be a tool,
Yeah.
just like it fixed my husband's eye. Let it be a tool, but don't let it be something that robs you of your life's joys or, even sadnesses. Sometimes you just need to experience sadness with other people. And I really enjoyed this. This is a total first for me. So thank you. You know, um,
Absolutely.
it's been a true joy being part of the Salt and Light journey. And at every turn of the corner, I've totally felt very blessed for these opportunities.
Okay, so I'm so excited that you were able to come on the show because, like, you're right. I think sometimes I can be extra hard because I struggle with technology, and so I can be extra hard on technology. But you're right, there's so many blessings that have come through my life, and I've learned so much through technology. And it's things like your show on Blessed and Beautiful, and hearing from all these different women on what their life is like and what their struggles are and how they're doing life, right?
Mm-hmm.
That has allowed other people to be encouraged to continue on, right? So there's like beautiful things that come out of technology, and I'm actually really glad that you've put a really good balanced approach to technology and you're able to share that with our listeners today. So I just want to thank you for coming on the show, and I'm glad that you're, getting more involved with the Salt and Light team and our mission here. So I just want to thank you again. And if anyone was interested in getting more information, is there a place that they might be able to reach out to you?
Um, I think Blessed and Beautiful was discussing having like an email. If you had questions for us as on Blessed and Beautiful, you could email the Morning Light people. And otherwise, I'm like I said, I'm really bad with technology. So like you should look at my non-work email. It is overloaded with unread messages. That's probably my downfall. But definitely they could reach out to you. You have my contact information. I love meeting new people. I love having conversations, even if it's something that I don't, know a whole bunch about, like tech. Don't ask me how to code. Please don't. Okay. We can't have a conversation about that because I don't know anything. But like whatever the topic, I feel like I love meeting people. And so reach out if you would like to, especially, like I said, I think through Blessed and Beautiful, Brian and Hope, who do the Morning Light,
Yeah.
as well as, you, if you feel like someone reaches out to you and has a question for me, absolutely pass them my way.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you, Taryn, so much for coming on the show, and hopefully we'll be able to talk again soon.
Sounds great. Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Desert Wanderers. If you liked it, give us a thumbs up as well as subscribe down below. We're produced by Salt and Light Radio, so you can find us on social platforms at Salt and Light Radio or Desert Wanderers Podcast. We produce episodes every week and we launch them for you on Wednesdays. So make sure to tune in for next week's episode, and we'll see you then.